Hey, welcome back to Crabby. Today we're going to be looking at Belfort. So this is going to be the rules and setup video. Click the link below for my playthrough and thoughts on the game. This is a worker placement game where we're essentially just rebuilding Belfort with our opponents, and the mayor is going to pick one of us to give the key to the city to. Alright, so before we get started, three things. Please like, subscribe, and comment on my videos or YouTube channel. That would be fantastic. Let's get started. Alright, for the setup, you're going to put out your 5 puzzle pieces to make your main board here. Just make sure that the point tracker on the outside makes sense, so it should be in numerical ascending order. Next, you're going to have your calendar board on one side. Use the gnomes according to the correct player count. Just look at the little chart over here, and you're going to have a calendar. Just get the calendar marker and put on the first month. Now also for this board, you're supposed to put this deck right on top of the spot right there, but it's going to be off screen, so I'm going to actually place it over here. And what you're supposed to do is flip over the top 3 cards to the right, but I'm going to do it right over here. Okay, on the other side, put out your resource board, put the money, steel, stone, and wood above it just to get ready. Put everyone's dwarves and elves in a pile above that section here. Okay, the last thing you need to do for the main board is put out your 5 guilds. So every game you're going to be playing with 5 guilds. You can randomize it or look at the book. There's some suggestions like play with 3 beginners and 2 resources, or 2 beginner, 2 interaction, and 1 beginner, and so on and so on. So you can mix those up. They go into the spots indicated on the board there. Okay, for the player stuff, just start off by putting their point tracker on the 0 space here. Next, each player is going to get a board which will tell them what color they're playing. Give them 3 regular dwarves, 3 regular elves, 12 property markers. Give each player a round tracker here. Then 5 gold, 1 steel, 1 stone, and 1 wood. Lastly, give each player 5 of those building cards. They're going to go through it, select 3, and the 2 that they don't pick, it's going to go into a discard pile. And there you go, we're ready to go. Let's go to rules. Alright, welcome to the rules overview for Belfort. So at its core, this is just a generic worker placement game, but it's got a sprinkling of area majority where we're going to be building buildings. So that's what we're using our workers to do, getting materials to build buildings to put out our houses on the game board, which is going to score us a ton in area majority. Okay, there's also some cool mechanics going on with the 2 different kind of workers that we have. They're going to get us different resources, and there's also a cool gnome system to unlock special powers in our buildings themselves. Okay, so the game's going to last 7 rounds here, and wherever you see an X, those are scoring rounds, and I'm going to talk about scoring later on in the video. Click on the link below for that. But every single round is going to sort of play out the same way, and it's neatly indicated on your own player board over here. Okay, so every single round you're going to go through the same 5 steps. Remember, the last step only if you're on an X round, but then you're just going to loop through this and loop through this. Generally, how the game flows is you're each going to take turn putting out your workers on the game board, whether it be guilds, your own buildings, turn order, new workers, and so on and so on. Then when everyone's finished and passed, when you pass, you put your workers up here in the resource section. Okay, then there's a collection phase where we're going to be collecting all our stuff, and then there's an action phase where in turn order you can do all your actions, which basically means pulling back all your workers and activating everything that you've placed. Okay, so it's not a game where you're placing and receiving. It's more of a everyone's going to place and then everyone's going to receive afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to go talk about all those phases in detail, including the scoring one. So there's 5 in total. Let's go. Alright, this may seem like a joke, but phase 1 is moving the calendar marker. You obviously skipped that during the first round of the game. Let's go to the next one. Alright, phase 2 is the placement phase. So you can almost think of it like the worker placement phase. So you're going to go in turn order. So you're going to look at your flags here. You're going to place 1 worker at a time, and you're just going to keep going until everyone's passed. Right? Placing a worker means putting out a dwarf or an elf, and the worker placement spots are indicated by these squarish / circle planks. Okay. Now, whenever you see a coin in the middle, that means you need to pay a coin into the bank to put your worker there. Another thing that differs this game from other worker placement games is you get nothing by doing the placement. You have to do everything afterwards in the collection / action phase. Okay. Now there's 4 different areas that you can place your workers. Let's go through them one at a time. First is the guilds. So you can have 5 guilds on your game board. To get the power of the guild, which is on the right, you're going to have to place a worker in the plank section next to it. Second place you can place a worker is in the recruitment center. You're going to notice the player count, I guess a number below it here. So what I would suggest is use a neutral player's color to cover up the spots if you're playing less than that indicated number of players. Next is the change turn order section up here. And lastly, there's your own player cards or buildings you have built during the game. Just a general note, if there's a gnome lock ability next to the plank, you need to unlock the ability with a gnome before you can put a worker there. Alright, so this is not a valid worker placement spot until there's a gnome there. Alright, so now I talked about placement, but there's a special thing going on during the placement phase. You're not forced to place all your workers everywhere. Okay, when it's your turn, what you can do is pass. Okay, and by passing, what you're going to do is you're going to use the rest of the workers in your worker pool and place them in the resource section up here. All right, so it's not a worker placement section in the resource market here. You're going to just place all your workers when you say pass. All right, and this is where the actual type of workers comes into play. All right, so to get wood, you need to send an elf. To get stone, you need to get a dwarf. To get steel, you have to send one of each, and money could be either one. Okay, so you can place them however you like. You can go like this, or you can go like this, and so on, however you like. But you need to place them all when you we say pass. You can't delay placing your workers. And that's it for this phase. Alright, phase 3 is the collection phase, where we're going to focus solely on this collection / resource board. Okay, so you're going to resolve all of these from left to right and then top down. Okay, so for the top section, that's collecting resources, and for whoever has the most in each spot is going to get a +1. Alright, and you're going to gain as much as the required number for the icon below. For example, let's go through these one at a time. In wood, yellow and red would each receive 2 wood each, and nobody would get the +1 bonus. In stone, red would get 1 and blue would get 3 +1 because they have the most. In steel, same thing. Red would get 1, yellow would get 3 because of the 2 +1. And for money, red would get 1 and blue would get 3, the 2 +1 extra for having the most. Okay, when you get your resources, return all your workers back to your own worker pool. All right, next you're gonna look at the recruitment desk over here. Now that player is gonna generate the same worker that was placed in that spot. All right, so again, you gotta keep track of the worker placement availability according to the number of players. But let's say we're playing 3 players, only the first one's available. So blue would send an elf, and they would get back an elf from the general supply into their own personal supply. All right. And lastly, let's talk about the king's tent over here, which is just a fancy way of saying changing the turn order. Okay, so we each have these turn order flags or turn order markers here, and what you're essentially doing is, in the order indicated in the worker placement spots here, is you're going to exchange flags with somebody else and then turn that flag over so nobody else can steal it from you. So let's just say red was first, blue was second, and yellow was third. Okay, yellow's first, so what they can do is exchange their flag with red and then flip it over so that nobody can steal it from them for the rest of the round. And then red will go next. Let's say they're third, so they're gonna flip their flag with blue and then flip it over. Okay, those are all the spots there. After resolving this, you're gonna do the income tax. So this is a 2-step process. First, you're gonna generate gold according to your buildings in the top right. Okay, so any building that you may have built with coins in the top right means you're going to generate that much coins from the general supply. So in this example here, I would take 2 coins from the general supply. Next, you have to pay your taxes. And the way this works is you're going to look at where your point marker is on the point track, and every section has a gold value above it, right? So this section here is 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so on and so on. Okay, so let's say my point tracker was here. I would need to pay 4 gold into the general supply. Now you don't have a choice, you have to pay it if you have the coinage. And for each coin you do not hold or possess, you lose a point. So let's say I had 3 coins but I have to pay 4. I would pay the 3 and then move my marker down 1. Now let's go to the next phase. Alright, phase 4 is the action phase. So you're going to do this in turn order, but unlike the placement phase, that player is going to do all their actions before jumping to the next player. Alright, once everyone's done all their actions, that's the end of the phase, you're going to go on to the next phase. Alright, so there's many different actions you can do in the game. So the first thing you can do is build buildings. Alright, so for that, first there's cards in your hand that you can build, and you can do that by paying the indicated cost in the top left of the card. So if you have those resources in your supply, you're going to pay for it. And then you'll be able to build a building. Now when you build a building, it'll obviously give you a benefit. I'll talk about all the buildings in the following section. Click on the link below. And you get to put out a property marker on the indicated icon on the game board. So here for the blacksmith it would be a black hammer. So what I would do is take one of my property markers and add it to the game board on a black hammer. And this is the area majority part of the game, so maybe I'll add a black hammer here, so I would tie yellow for 2 to score area majority here, or again to add it here so I can score 1 against yellow, or maybe I want to be second place, so I'll add it here so it'll be 3 to my 1. Alright, so let's just say I place it here for example. Alright, there's a couple of extra things you can actually build that are not part of your cards. First is the actual guilds could be built. Okay, so you can actually build the guild by placing a marker next to the guild card here, and each guild costs 2 of each resource: 2 wood, 2 stone, 2 steel. You just turn that into the general supply and add your marker there. The other thing you can build on the game board that's not actually a card is the wall sections on the outside. So each section is going to have 2 wall pieces, one on each corner, bottom left and right corner, and the cost is indicated on your player board here. So it's going to say here wall, it's going to cost you 3 wood and 3 stone, and it says here, it says no card. Alright, so if you had that in your personal supply, you'll turn that in, take one of your property markers, select any wall piece on the game board, and just put your property marker there. Okay, so besides building, other actions you can do is pulling your workers from the worker placement spots. So remember, if you had them on guilds, for example, if I had it here, I can pull off my worker to get the benefit from that guild. And you can pull off workers from your own cards. So for example, if I had a worker here, I can pull off this worker to get the benefit from that plank spot or from the spot next to it here. Okay. Now the next 3 actions you can do, you can only perform exactly 1 time on your turn. First is buying a gnome. So it's going to cost you 3 gold, and you take a gnome and you have to have the spot available on your cards. For example, if these were my cards, I can add a gnome to where there's a pentagonal shape somewhere. So either here or here or here. Right. The next thing you can do is buy another property card. So you can buy from either of the displayed cards or the top of the deck, and the card will cost you 1 gold. Okay. And the last thing you can do 1 time is, if you look at the bottom of the calendar board here, is you can do 1 buy and 1 sell action. Alright, so selling is exchanging resources for coins, and buying is buying resources for coins, right? So you can do 1 of each. And that's it for the actions. You do all your actions and you move on to the next player. Alright, the 5th phase of the game is the scoring phase. So remember, like I said in the overview, you're only going to activate that phase during the 3rd, 5th, and 7th round, indicated by the red X's on the calendar. And for that phase, you're going to look at the scoring chart up here, and you're going to score it for 2 things: the majorities for each section on the game board, and also for the total number of workers. Alright, so let's talk about these one at a time. So for each of these slices of the game board, you're going to score majority. Alright, so whoever has the most is going to score 5 points, and whoever's second is going to get 3. And if you're playing 4 players or more, 3rd place is going to get 1 point. So for example, this section here, yellow will get first place 5 points and red will get 3. So just move your marker of the score track. And you'll do that for all 5 seconds. On a tie, essentially nobody gets that value and you all jump over to the next value. So for example, let's say here there was a tie between red and blue. Both players would get 3 points. After scoring the majorities, you're going to score the total number of workers. So you're going to see how many elves everyone has and do the same thing. So whoever has the most elves is going to get 3, then it's 1. Whoever has the most dwarfs between all the players is going to get 3, and then 1. And then whoever has the most gnomes between all the players is going to do the same thing, get 3, and second place is going to get 1. You'll tally all that up and then jump to the next round. Alright, just a couple of extra rules that we need to talk about. If you place a worker on the guild and somebody owns that guild, they get the coin instead of the bank. Normally when you see these planks of wood and there's a coin, it will go to the bank, but in this case it will go to that player. Alright. Next thing we need to talk about that I didn't mention throughout the video is the super workers. Alright. So throughout the games, using certain buildings, you're going to be able to upgrade your regular elf or dwarf into super elves and dwarves. Okay. I didn't talk about them during the video because essentially they work exactly like regular workers in every single way, except for when gathering resources, they gather an extra +1. For example, if you send a super elf into the forest here, you get 2 wood, and if you send a dwarf in here, you get 2 stone. They also count for 2 when collecting steel. So if you would send 2 regular elves and a super dwarf here, you would get 2 steel. Okay. Now what it doesn't give you is an extra +1 when calculating the majority, right? So this would still be 3 meeples, let's just say, compared to another player who might have had 2 elves and 2 dwarves getting the exact same result, but they would get the extra steel because they would have more people in that section. Alright, next we're going to go through all the buildings in the game and figure out what their effects are on the game board and in your player area and any special rules that they might have. Okay, so the first one that we're going to look at here is the keep. Remember, it gives you a coin income during the income phase, and when you build it, you're going to put out 2 property markers instead of the usual 1 in the same district, right? So you have to pick one of the districts and place both markers there. So for example here. Next is the library. Again, it gives you an income. This one lets you put it out on the book symbol, so it's the long orange section on the outside here. And by putting a worker here, during the action phase, you'll get to draw 2 and discard 2 property cards from the top of the deck. Alright, not from the display. Now, if you put a gnome to unlock it in the future, at the end of your turn, when you're done, you're going to draw 1 card from the top of the deck. Next is the gatehouse, very similar to the keep. What you're going to do is you're going to put your marker on the gatehouse, so wherever you see the key. Okay, and when you put a gnome in the future, you're going to get to put another one on the same gatehouse. Alright, like that. Just an extra rule, no 2 players can occupy the same gatehouse. So by putting a gnome, only you can place your marker here and somebody else can't place it here by building their gatehouse. Next is the market. Again, I'll give you a coin income. This is just a worker placement slot that'll give you 2 coins. Okay, and it's the I guess the weighted scales here, so it's the place in the middle. Any of the 5 districts. By putting gnomes on here, very important. So normally you're restricted to do the trading action only once on your turn. For every gnome you have on this card, you can do an extra trading action, so an extra buy and sell. So you'd have 2 buys and 2 sells, and if you had both gnome actions filled up here, you would have 3 buys and 3 sells. This is the bank. It just gives you a coin, and if you put a gnome, it will give you an extra coin. The blacksmith gives you a steel. If you put a gnome, you can exchange once on your turn a gold for a steel. How I like to track it is just flip the gnome around to say that you've used it this turn, and then just flip it back at the end of your turn. The inn, one of the most powerful buildings in the game, honestly. For this, it does nothing unless you put a gnome. And as soon as you put a gnome, you're able to create more dwarves and more elf workers by putting your marker and paying a coin into the general supply. Next, the tower, just like the inn, it does nothing when you build it, but it does give you an income, unlike the inn. And when you place it here, again, you can place a worker and a coin, and you can generate a gnome for only 1 coin instead of the normal 3 that it costs. Okay. And then we get to the 2 last buildings, which are very similar. You got the garden and the pub. So the gardens are here, and the pub is over here. So this is how you generate super workers. Alright, it's the only way to do it. Alright, so as soon as you put the gnome there, what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your current workers in your worker pool, and you're going to flip it over to the other side. Now it's very important in this game that you don't flip your things over randomly, and they all have to stay on the same side. In general, it's easy to calculate. All your guys are going to be on the normal side unless you've built gardens or pubs. In that case, you just count as many super workers as you should have according to how many of these cards you have. And pretty much those are all the buildings.